Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Omnichannel X podcast. I hope you had a good break this summer. It is September 2nd at the point we're recording this, and I am here with Bouke Vlierhuis, if I'm not mangling.
Vlierhuis, yeah.
Vlierhuis?
Vlierhuis.
Vlierhuis. Yeah. I have a higher than average, but still human rating with Dutch names. If you don't know my name.
Dutch people struggle with Dutch names, so no apologies needed.
So, if you don't know who I am Urbina, the host of the Omnichannel X podcast. And Bouke is an old friend of the podcast. He was one of the first speakers at the physical Omnichannel X conference. So he was actually on the stage with us when we ran a physical conference in 2019.
Legendary.
Yes, thank you. That was
still my favorite conference I ever spoke at.
Oh man, yeah, it was pretty amazing. And if anyone ever did go to one of those conferences, they were very special, online and offline. The conference market is a little bit of an interesting thing post-COVID, so we're happy to be a podcast now and still be friends with some of the connections we made from back in the day. Bouke is a B2B marketer and early adopter in AI, works a lot in content creation, but with a very strategic bent and a little bit of a technological know-how as well. Bouke, do you want to introduce yourself and tell the people a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I'm an engineer. And once you train as an engineer, you're an engineer for life. So I was trained as an aerospace engineer. I never worked in aerospace. I worked in IT, software engineering for 5 years or so. And an engineer to me is someone that gets a problem on their desk, then starts gathering information. And once they have enough information, they come up with a solution. And the first solution never works. So they come up with a second solution and a third one, and they keep going and grinding at it until it works. That's what an engineer does. And I tried to apply that way of working to writing a novel, and that didn't work. So I sort of started freelancing just to get away from my novel, and that was in 2003, I guess. And I started building websites, and I found out that people were really bad at copywriting for some reason. And copywriting just came natural to me. So I started out in politics, like ghostwriting columns for local politicians and that stuff. And all the while I was programming. At some point in 2019, I decided now I'm going to just do marketing for IT companies, because apparently being an IT engineer still just made me very good at talking to other software people, and that was really the moment that things started to take off.
I think that it makes sense for me because often in content creation, you're trying to achieve empathy. So if you do have the personal domain experience and you can write, which is more of a, I've taken writing classes, but I am of the belief that certain people can write and certain people can't. It's like you can teach dancing, but you can't teach great dancing.
You couldn't teach me dancing, though.
Exactly. So you just happen to be a writer who trained as an engineer and found your way there. And you're
possibly. I think it all starts, and this is more relevant to the whole AI story than you might think. I think it all starts with reading. Mm-hmm. So our brains are basically wired for pattern recognition. So the more great texts you read, better your brain will recognize whether or not you're writing something good. And it's that feedback loop that actually makes writing good. The great thing about this home office that I have is that this is my office and my home is back there. And when I stop working, like at the end of the afternoon, I leave my phone here.
Wow.
In the office. And sometimes that lasts for 2 minutes. Sometimes it lasts for the entire night. But it gives me a window to do like the analog things, like cook dinner, talk to my kids, and read a book. So yeah, if your phone is within arm's length, forget about the book. I mean, my brain is just as addicted as everyone else's. But you leave your phone at the office and then you read your book. That's. If you take one thing away from this podcast, this should be the one.
Okay, well, speaking of books and
Yeah,
feedback loops that you get from creating content, you just are now a published author. I got my copy last week.
yeah. I'm extremely proud to be in your bookcase. So
And if only I could read,
yeah,
if only I could read Dutch. But I did read the Google translation,
yeah,
and I really liked it. There was actually a lot of nice, fresh concepts in there, which is rare. So the survival guide for the B2B marketer, AI survival guide,
yeah.
would be the best translation of the title. You want to tell us a little bit about it
Absolutely.
and why write this book?
Well, so AI happened, and it started taking sizable bites out of my business model quite quickly. Like March 23, I was seeing the first clients leave. So that's pretty soon after ChatGPT landed, because I was working with IT companies, still do, and they're quite quick, adopting this sort of technology because they were already writing their code with GitHub Copilot. So they were used to using these AI tools, and they were pretty quick in going like, "Oh yeah, I ordered 3 of these web pages, but I already sort of made them myself. Can you look them over?"
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh no, this is not happening. I am not going to be your look over the ChatGPT text guy. That's not going to be me." So I was like, okay, I need a strategy. And then I was thinking about my own strategy. And then I realized, okay, my clients need a strategy as well, because this is coming for us. I mean, this is coming for our entire process, the entire way of doing things, where you get to sit down and think of a strategy and think of sort of content pieces, like we're going to do 4 white papers this year, and that's ambitious,
Hmm.
right? And then you brief your white paper and then you wait for 2 weeks, because I'm typing. I spend my days typing. I make my money typing, and then I send it to you, and you look at it, and we do feedback, and I gotta go back to typing. So, and that entire process just sort of got smashed into like nothing. And I was trying to deal with that, being a copywriter, but my clients were also trying to deal with that, and they were asking me, "So how do we deal with
Hmm.
it?" So I was like, okay, so I can't make money typing anymore. That was just gone within the year, basically. Where I was working, like in the IT sector, like the whole thing where you can sit down for a week and write a white paper, that was gone. That was so quickly. You just blink your eyes and your entire business model is gone.
Mm.
But my clients were asking me, what do I do with AI? Where do I deploy this technology? And I started advising them, and that started the book, basically. So the first idea was, okay, so my clients are asking me this. And if your clients are asking you questions, that's a marketing opportunity.
Hmm.
That's how marketing works. Client questions, you answer them in the right way, you get new clients. So
You're preaching to the choir right there. Question
you should
Questions
you should
over
probably
time.
write this
Yeah,
down.
exactly, exactly. It's a good one, Bouke. Yeah, no, questions over
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Questions over
Did you
time.
know this?
For those unaware, Bouke has just touched on one of my hottest hot buttons about how all design, content design, user experience design, etc., is the mapping of user questions over time. That's what we're here for, is to help people find out how to answer their questions in a way which leads them to their objectives. So absolutely. So that is marketing, it is design,
So,
it
yeah.
is it is designing, making the customer experience.
So I'm a B2B marketer, and I provide B2B services myself. So in B2B marketing, whatever the question is, the answer is always an ebook. Right? So I started writing an ebook about how B2B marketers need to deal with AI. And that spiraled out of control, basically. Once it hit like, I don't know, 30,000 words, I was like, okay, maybe this is not, fit for a PDF. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to make a physical book, and I'm going to just pass them out like as a present, like as a business card. And then I onboarded my favorite designer, and I asked her to make a great design for it. And it just, the moment I got the design, it was like, okay, this is way too beautiful to just be passing out at like corporate drinks or networking events or whatever. So I took a deep breath and I called one of my favorite, self-publishing houses. They did my poetry collection last year. So and I consulted with them, and then I decided to just go all the way. And now it's just, I got an email this morning that some person in some bookstore in a town in the Netherlands where I've never been bought my book. So that's magic. It's magic. So I went all the way, and it's now on all the online bookstores, and it's even selling. It's quite niche.
So
actually.
let's focus on a little bit more of the meat in the book. So
Yeah,
so you and I are both big on process. I think that's something that we both have a
absolutely.
somewhat of a technical background, moved into strategy, content experience, and I think AI, it's kind of bringing the nerd into the art class. I think we have been advocates for years telling marketing teams that they needed to have process, they needed to have structure, they needed to have defined life cycles and knowledge pipelines, information pipelines, data pipelines,
Governance.
governance, all these fancy things to basically say, get your house in order. You need to have a repeatable model and system to scale content. It is a creative artifact. There's human creativity involved, but to scale requires you to set up a whole factory, with a supply chain and partnerships, inputs and outputs. So if you're in B2B marketing, it's not just a bunch of artists creating as they want to. So how does that, when you have AI, which is a technical tool which is transforming that business, how do you bring that into the B2B marketing world? And then what are the big effects?
Well, yeah, I'm a process analyst, like by background. I did some process analysis quite recently, actually, in a lab. And when you start looking at processes, there's always one. The layman's term is the bottleneck, but if you're into processing, it's the constraint, right? There's one constraint, and anything you optimize outside that constraint is meaningless because the constraint will always be the constraint. And classically in content creation was always the bottleneck, the constraint. And that constraint was so huge that it was pretty much useless for any B2B marketer to be looking at their process because whatever they would optimize on their side would be consumed by me, the copywriter or the designer or whatever, taking 2 weeks to write the thing. So the 2 weeks to write the thing turned into an afternoon. And then all the other constraints and all the other bottlenecks in the process, they start sticking out. So that's what happens when you optimize one part of a process, the inefficiencies in the rest of the process come out. So us marketers, we've always known that approval and briefing processes were extremely inefficient. We've always known this, but it just nobody really cared about optimizing these things because creation took so much time.
By
And
the
that
time you have
just
something
changed.
to approve and put out there, that's
Whatever.
just the
Yeah,
marginal error.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You took 2 weeks to write the thing, so I can take 2 weeks to read it, right? That's how it works. And now another thing has happened, and that content has become smaller and faster. So we're moving away from white papers and we're moving towards like thought leadership on LinkedIn, or we're doing like video snippets or live streams or whatever. So content production has had to scale up and get faster. So
Anyway, without AI.
these two, without
Yeah.
AI, yeah, sure. So these two things have combined, and suddenly, all of a sudden, like process analysis is hip again. I was at a marketing event, and the first speaker just pulled up his first slide, and it was a flow chart of their marketing process. And I sort of stood up and went, yes, chart.
Flow charts. Flow
Finally,
charts for win.
20 years in marketing, and this is my first flow chart. So, yeah, process analysis has had a complete renaissance in marketing, and I love it. And that's the meat of the book is about, not about the one thing I didn't want to do was make the next like prompt book.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, yeah.
open up ChatGPT and type this. That would be like outdated in 2 weeks, right? So when GPT-4 replaced GPT 3.5, I got to throw away all my prompts and start over. So that happens like every couple of weeks. I wanted to teach marketers something that they're not very good at, which is have a overall vision of what technology means for them and have an overall vision of their process, starting with what is it that we're trying to achieve here? Because they often behave like an internal agency where sales or a director or whatever will come, we need a white paper, and they start running around and trying to create that white paper. So I think AI will eventually help B2B marketers take that step towards being more strategic, being at the table when the decisions are taken, knowing that creation will not bog them down. So knowing that they can be strategic, take the time to talk about strategy and to talk about purpose and all these things that, well, we've used the words, but eventually when you get back to your desk, it's just, trying to get the thing made, right? And AI will help them do that. And I tried to write a book just giving them some pointers about the new mindset that you need.
So you had
Basically,
you introduced some specific terms and concepts which I really liked. So for example, the chainsaw effect, which sounds like what you've been talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I've been talking about.
So for me, that's if the way that I understood it is like you've gone from the axe to the chainsaw, and it used to take you so long to get your hands on a tree that everything about processing the tree and distributing it and turning it into paper and products and things was not the problem, because cutting the thing down took so bloody long. And then someone hands you a chainsaw, and suddenly you're exposing all of the downstream issues in your process.
Absolutely, yeah. And this comes directly from my experience gardening, where I love electric tools, but eventually you cut down one tree, and that takes you about like 15 minutes, and then you look behind you and there's so many branches and stuff that takes you the rest of the weekend to clean up. So that's where the chainsaw effect comes from.
Well, I love it when somebody, I think that it's always great, and I find a lot of great thinkers that they're crossing the streams between something they know in their life. It becomes a kind of a metaphor to help them understand a new concept. The other metaphor I really liked, which we can discuss the origins of, was the fountain pen syndrome. Do you want to tell people a little bit about that?
Yeah, that actually comes from a Urbina quote. So I think we did a 2-part podcast like a long time ago, and then you said something that resonated with me, which is people identify with the inefficiencies of their trade. So there's copywriters that identify with the click-clack of their keyboard. Mm-hmm. And I started thinking about that. And then I started getting really annoyed by the logos that copywriters and creative agencies have, because they always have like these fountain pens and typewriters in their logos. I'm like, no, that's all wrong. That's not your trade. Putting like letters on a screen is not what you do as a copywriter. What you do as a copywriter is determining, why are we doing this? What are we going to do to achieve these goals? Which inputs do we need? Like interviewing is like 90% of what you do as a copywriter. Bad interview, bad content, right? I mean, come on. And then at the other end of the production line, if you will, just check the finished product. Does this comply with what we've set out to do? Does it fit the tone of voice? Does it achieve our strategic goals? Does it resonate? All the marketing, like the things you need to do. And that typewriter, that needs to go.
The fountain pen, the
And
typewriter.
oh no,
Yeah.
get it away
No,
from
the
me.
handcrafting. No, yeah, I think it's really hard, and I brought that from a whole different industry. I got that one from my experience in technical communication, and there's a lot of people who were identifying. Copy editing, for example, is a great example. I spell really well. I'm a great speller. I can spot a grammar error that no one else spotted, and I'm like, that's great, and I know that that's cool, and you spent 30 years being proud of that, and you should be proud of it. It's a cool skill, but there's a difference between having a neat skill and having something that is marketable after a technical revolution, because the skills mix that we need changes, and nobody is just one thing that they do. You as you said, you do add more value than that.
Absolutely. But the funny thing is, once you start seeing these effects, you see them everywhere, because like marketers, like marketing managers and managers in general, they're the same, because many managers will think that somewhere deep down they will have the idea that what they do is write emails and update spreadsheets, right? That's the inefficiencies of their trade are a lot of communication, management communication is just redundant. It's people asking, what's the deadline for this? So if you have your process in order and there's a board, like we have Kanban boards, we have them for decades, but B2B marketers never use them because they were making 4 white papers a year. So you would have a board with like four cards on it. So when you start scaling up and when you start like making faster and smaller content, you need to look at that process as well. And you need to not be, updating spreadsheets and sending emails. But that is also for a marketing manager and a leader or a manager in general. They also have the mission now to step back from their desk and look at what they're doing and look at what is AI going to do for me? Because, copy pasting from Google Analytics to PowerPoint, which is something most marketing managers do every Monday, that needs to go as well.
So basically, a full process rethink.
Absolutely.
At every level of the organization. I think that your book also provided some like do's and don'ts. So we want to be aware of this, the chainsaw effect, avoid the fountain pen syndrome. What are like key pitfalls or tent poles that we can still rely on going forward?
Well, I think there's a 5 in the book, but I think the 2 most important ones are, first of all, if it's not working, don't scale it up. So don't use AI to scale up crap. Because if you're honest, like most B2B content is not working because it does not resonate, and it does not resonate because it's written and created from the inside out. So it's about the product and not about the client. So if you have 4 white papers a year now that are about the product and not about the client, that are not being downloaded or not delivering any leads or prospects or sales or whatever, doing 12 or 24 of them, or doing like variations of them for every sector, because it's an easy thing to do with AI, will not get you any results. So you will be scaling up crap. That is rule number 1. Just take the time that you win by using AI to actually think about what you're doing, for whom you're doing this, and why, and to go look for these customer questions. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is human in the loop, because AI content is not going to be as good as content that is written by a professional copywriter with 21 years of experience and not a lot of hair. So and even if they do have hair, they're probably pretty good. So there needs to be that final like 10% where you actually look at it and go, okay, we tried this hook last week and it didn't really work. We need to go the extra mile. And then process thinking kicks back in, because if you get a hook like the first line, the scroll stopping line for a LinkedIn post that doesn't work, and you correct it, and then you get one tomorrow again and you correct it again, then you have to go like, okay, I've corrected this twice, so that means I need to go back into the process and change what the agent or the workflow or whatever is doing, because I'm doing repetitive work. So then you go back to process thinking. But the two most important things is don't scale up crap and keep the human in the loop.
I've noticed that the not scaling up crap, I was going to stop you a little while back when you were talking about how, you couldn't do anything because of the creation bottleneck. On the Omnichannel podcast, a lot of what we're talking about is, okay, yeah, it took you ages to create this stuff. Now leverage. How do you reuse? How do you prevent creation from being a bottleneck by leveraging that asset you've created as much as possible? And what I'm seeing is that AI just pours gasoline over that whole thing, because now you are both creating and leveraging at this. You have the capacity, let's put it that way. You have the chainsaw now. So now you can really do all of this at an incredible speed. The human in the loop, it shifts things to strategy and quality. What are we mapping from user needs, questions over time, our understanding of the user, over to the user results? Are we getting people's questions answered? Are they being solved? And this machine that we're setting up, and I use that term very metaphorically, the human and AI collaborative process that we're setting up, how are we fine-tuning it? I also was going to kind of push back a little bit about throwing your prompts out every 6 months. That's another podcast, but I can talk about how to make sure that your prompts have longevity. But I think it has to do with making sure that you have thought through your process, and that you have these chunks of independent logic which make sense. So we know that breaking down an interview transcript should always look like this. So our rules for breaking down an interview transcript are consistent. Then there's another question, which should be a different prompt, like how do we take broken down nuggets of research and process them into insights? And then, what do we do insights? So looking at every step of your process flow and isolating it and treating it like an industrial process. What I love about this whole AI revolution is it's kind of forcing organizations to finally do what we have been talking about for 25 plus years.
Decades. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I love that about AI. Just like I said, AI has made process thinking and process analysis hip again, and I love it, because that's what I did for a living, like back then. And I actually have a client who has developed an ERP for buying and selling used cars, just because he was a car salesman for 20 years. And for 20 years, he walked around, we need to do better. And I've been walking around in marketing for 20 years and thinking the exact same thing. So I sent him the book, and he took the trouble to contact me from his holiday address. And he was like, yes, finally a kindred spirit. So I think marketing is waking up. And part of it is because marketers are finding out they can automate things, and they're like, okay, we need to automate things, and they call someone who knows how to automate things. Like there's all these people like doing no code and stuff, and the first thing these people ask is, what's your process? And this is forcing them to think about, oh yeah, what's my process? So I'm having fun. I'm having fun. You know, my whole business model was shot to hell, and I'm having fun.
Well, it's interesting because I'm getting contacted by, and I used to talk a lot about the stretching of the market, that we would see more and more separation between the haves and the have-nots, and I think that's we're finally seeing it play out. So some people are racing ahead. We're having the same problem right now. Maybe you are as well. We just have more business than we can handle. Like it's everything's going fantastic. And then other people there's just this flood of job postings on LinkedIn, which is not always the fault of the people who are being let go. A lot of that time, that's managers or organizations who assume that this is all just going to work. And as well, we've been very positive about how this and how you can do it, think about your process, but nobody really, we're in a period of transition. So we can make good predictions, but exactly where the chips are going to land is still up for grabs. So,
Absolutely.
a lot of people are getting let go on a hope or a vendor promise.
Oh yeah, well, we all know about vendor promises. They're just, I think Gardner needs to attach an extra piece of paper to the top of their hype cycle for AI. Because the hype is like through the
Yeah.
roof, and I think looking at the things we're reading now in the press and the things people are posting on LinkedIn, maybe it's my bubble, but I think we're heading for the trough of disillusionment quite quickly now.
So let me pause you
And
there. For those who are unfamiliar, Gartner publishes their hype cycle, which plots out the life cycle of hype for technologies. So you start. I don't remember all the phases by name, but the big one, there's the peak of expectations or something like that, where how the hype is like it's going to be magic, it's going to change the world, we're all going to be geniuses, there'll be no poverty. It's just like John Lennon's Imagine.
solve climate change. That's a big one as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Death,
yeah,
disease, everything's going to be fixed. And that's kind of
absolutely.
where I would say that's where we were 6 months ago. And
Yeah, I think we're pretty much over the top with
yeah,
that.
and
Yeah,
so now we
absolutely.
are heading down to what Gartner calls the trough of disillusionment, where people recognize that all of the promises that they heard are not coming true, and then it gets very negative. What comes then is I don't remember what they call it, but we slope
The plateau of
not
productivity.
before the plateau.
There's
Yeah, so
there's another one before
yeah,
that.
we have
Okay.
to we have to then ramp back up from, oh, that was a waste, it was a bunch of lies, the vendors were all, it was just a bunch of junk, to realize, oh, actually there is a lot of value here. But what are the processes, what are the systems, what are the best practices, what are the expertise mix, what does the reorganization of teams look like? And when we do that, then we ramp up into eventually to the plateau of productivity, which I think we're far, far from with AI. So how do we get on that ramp?
Well, the thing I've been doing for the last couple of weeks, month maybe, is I've been just you should try this. Talking to people. This is it's pretty cool. I didn't know this existed, but I just sit down and I talk to an actual person about what they're actually doing and not doing with AI, and if they're not doing things that I think they might be doing, I ask them why they're not doing that. So what I'm collecting by doing that is first of all actual practical use cases, because there are actual practical use cases. I'm the prime example. I've completely transformed my business model. I'm an interim marketing manager now for two different companies at the same time, while also doing their content creation. So AI is helping me work two jobs in the same hours.
Yeah.
Oh, not to brag, but that reflects on your income. Let's just, So I'm a successful AI use case myself, and I talk to people. I talked to a software engineer who has fully automated compliance documentation, and solution design for cloud applications. Like fully automated. This is like a 5-person team spent 2 weeks kind of work. And I've also started, and this is also fun, talking to people who don't work in marketing at all. People who work in HR, middle management. Middle management has like the most awesome AI use cases. Like that goes from not watching a 30-minute video the senior management sent you because they have read somewhere that you should update your people by talking to a camera for 30 minutes. I don't know. Not watching that, but summarizing that to writing like a speech for a retirement party for someone, because managers are like really fucking busy,
right?
And they want to
writing a retirement party speech is something that people expect of them.
Yeah, that's expected of them, and they want to do it right. They want to be empathic and all that stuff, but they're busy. They're really, really, really busy. And I've been compiling I don't want to call it a database because it's just like a bunch of notes, but of actual successful, profitable AI use cases, and there is a lot of them out there.
And so is that your next white paper? Is that your next book? I'm immediately going, ooh, I want to see the use cases. Show me the use cases.
So, yeah. I want to write them down, but I want to have at least 30 conversations with people. So I'm not even halfway yet. So that's going to take a couple of months. But I want to write this down. And when we hit that low where everybody's going like, yeah, I told you this AI stuff is not going to work. Just let's start typing again. I want to show people that this is actually working. It's just not working as quickly as the bros were selling it to us.
Exactly. I think it's have been sold these promises, and we've been watching for 20 years. Things just happen faster and faster. So I always think of those adoption things. So like, how long did it take for everybody to have a TV? How long did it take for everyone to have a VCR? How long did it take for everyone to have a CD player, DVD player? And the curve just keeps getting sharper and sharper. And then it switched to apps. So you didn't even have to get a physical product. So how long before everyone was on Facebook? How long before everyone had Instagram? Blah, blah. And then TikTok and then ChatGPT was the fastest we've ever seen since that. Up to a billion users in record time. And so we kind of get this idea that everything should just happen like that now. And if it doesn't just happen, if it takes 2 years, then that's glacially slow and obviously a failure. And
yeah, but you have to remember that we're talking about enterprise, like corporate adoption here.
We're talking about human beings adopting. Humans adopting in their personal life and their small businesses or their enterprises. If they're humans facing real change, not just, oh, this is just a click into my regular life, but real change, that takes time. And especially in corporates.
And we're still getting used to like working from home and having Teams meetings. Like there's still no emotional, social framework for working from home and talking to each other, in these little digital squares. Yeah. I keep asking everyone, what do you do if someone cries on a Teams call?
Jesus.
Right? No one knows. So we're emotionally adapting to like the last 2 or 3 technological revolutions, and this AI thing, the technology is there. Like the use cases for GPT-4 and for GPT-5, the difference is marginal. So I think technology-wise, we can do anything we want right now. So adoption is like the next frontier. So if you're 20 years old and you're listening to this and you're wondering what career you should pursue, adoption consultants. This is going to be the gold mine the next 2 decades. Yeah. Help people actually use this and deal with the change that it requires of you, because the change is huge. Yeah. And I'm 49 years old, I miss typing for a week and delivering a white paper. I miss it. I feel these emotions, and I'm like half tech bro and half like 49-year-old copywriter. So it's people always think that these things are easy for me because I move pretty quickly, like business wise. But it's this thing that happened to us is huge.
Yeah.
So don't if you're a manager and you think your people are slow, don't scream at them because they're adapting. It's this thing is really, really, really big.
Yeah. Help them, facilitate them. I
Help them.
so
Yeah, and that's what you're.
it,
Did did I show you this one? I wrote this to help B2B marketers because B2B marketers they were overwhelmed like pre-AI because there's I work for a company that has 50 salespeople, and 2 marketers, and this is all through B2B. This is their daily fight. They want to service all this entire this sales machine, understaffed, underfunded, underskilled usually, and then AI happened. So this book was written to
it,
help
because
them.
people needed a survival guide. And I can't
Exactly,
I can't
yeah.
agree more about what you said about adoption, consultancy. So I've been doing trainings and workshops for my whole career, and our AI adoption workshop is nuts. Like I've not seen people react to anything like that in my career. People are so happy and it's so in demand. And I also, not to brag, but I got like that email, that email that every workshop leader wants to get after a workshop, where someone said, we went from an already understaffed team of 20 down to 3. They fired everybody. Leadership decided to go all in on AI, and then it, like in not in all caps but in bold type in the middle, I truly believe taking your workshop is what helped me stay employed. Like, the people who can adopt, the people who can kind of, rather than just kind of fight it and point out all the flaws, point out the flaws, but go, okay, how do we work with the flaws? Because it is flawed. Which something, we haven't touched it much on this podcast, but you can check out our many other episodes. Nobody is saying that AI is perfect. Nobody is saying that none of the flaws that you've heard about exist. They absolutely do exist. The question is, how do you put in process so that you can work around those flaws? And you mentioned human in the loop earlier. How do you build a human AI process that is robust? If you build your process so that it has 0 tolerance for flaws, bad process.
Absolutely, and AI just sometimes it just does these weird things. So people say AI, you should treat AI like an intern. Well, I think that's an insult to the interns basically because sometimes a 700-word blog post that should be like an easy machine readable instruction, right?
Well, that's
Well,
okay. That is a funny one. So there is, okay. I've worked with a bunch of interns, and I do get stuff from interns and go, what? Just you forget 25, 30 years into your career what it was like to be 22 and just
nothing.
not have the context. It's not like you know nothing. But it's tempting to say that. It's tempting to say, do you know nothing? Like, because you're just new. You're just like, oh, I just didn't know that. I didn't have that background. Didn't have that context. So sometimes they come with stuff where, yeah, for me it's a very similar experience to what the AI does. But you're right. There is this little area of failure modes, which are just not human failure modes. Like no human. I'll give you a perfect example. We were working on website content, and the prompt said, draft up this piece of content and add 3 related links to case studies from the website. And if it didn't have case studies that were on the website, it just made them up.
Yeah.
So
I have like white paper templates that say insert reference cases here. So you have to delete that from your
because
template
inserts
because
the reference,
it
it
will.
inserts the reference cases. And then I had this person searching the website, going, "Where are these case studies? I can't find them." And I'm like, "Because they don't exist." Yeah, yeah, we've never worked with Procter and Gamble. It just never happened.
No. Oh, ask me about this in-depth research about AI in the audiovisual industry,
Oh, oh,
because that never existed as
oh,
well.
actually,
That's
we should talk about that the MIT headline. That's all the buzz. 95% of AI POCs or projects fail.
yeah, yeah, sure, yeah. Innovation fails, right? And most of it fails because the expectations are too high, and the other things that fail should, well, you win, and you lose, you learn. That should be like the mode we're in, I think, especially with agentic AI. I mean, the things that can go wrong in an agent project are just, there's failure modes there that we don't even know about, and we should, probably hurry up and test things and find these failure modes and
Understand them.
think, yeah, understand them, think of ways to work around them, because I should think that most of the things we're doing with the technology we knew nothing about like 2 years ago are failing.
I think that
It,
the expectation that they shouldn't fail. The thing is, there's some context to that 95% number. That's 95% of the time when the management just pushed out AI onto everybody and said, "Go be productive." And so yeah, the expectations are
yeah,
nuts. Here's a tool, you have no training, you have no background, it's a
yeah,
magic wand, be productive. And then they failed to meet expectations. No duh.
yeah. I mentioned that I'm an aerospace engineer. You know how we achieved like the safety level of of airplanes that we have now, because they fall out of the fucking sky all the time, and then we don't go like, this is how we discovered like metal fatigue,
Yeah. Things
because
exploding.
aluminum airplanes were falling out of the sky. So yes, obviously the first couple of years things are going to crash and burn, of course, and you should budget for it, and you should build an infrastructure. And there's actually a whole chapter in the book about thinking about innovation. How do you think, how you get your head around, innovating and failing and building an infrastructure that takes failure and weaponizes, if you will, the lessons from it, and injects them back into the innovation process. Because you're not just in your process, you're always also in an innovation process, which is innovating your process. So you have to, even a marketer that you used to like send out briefings on Monday and wait for the white papers to come in. And now you're just a process person, which also involves innovating your process and accelerating it, and integrating new technology, because new technology lands about every minute and a half right now. So
Love that. Okay. Well, we are sadly at time. Thank you, Bouke, for joining us again and contributing this book to the community. I hope if you can read it in Dutch, please do check it out. Otherwise, maybe a translation's sometime in the future to watch this space. uh, Otherwise, thank you all for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.